The story I'm going to be telling you today is from, in medieval Sweden, there was a collection of songs that were written about little Kirsten and Lord Peter. And so they weren't linear, they were written, there was a whole bunch that have survived. So I've taken a couple of them and pieced them together. So this is a story of the power of the harp. For as long as she could remember, Kirsten had been scared of the water. Not all water, but there was a river that flowed right by her town. And she was terrified of it. Everyone knew the Nichen lived in this river. Now, the Nichen was a water monster, and it wasn't scary because it was big and scary, but it could take any form it wanted. And so it would attract people it could walk when it wanted to, but it was contained in this river. It also played a violin, and the sound of it, no one could resist the violin. And ever since the disappearance of her sisters, she hadn't gone near it for many years. And they weren't dead. Some would say maybe they were, but she knew that they weren't. They were gone, but not in a final way. She still held that hope. But with them gone, she sort of retreated into herself, and she would go through the town and she would have her cloak drawn over her golden hair, and she wouldn't talk to anyone, and she didn't get close to anyone until one day. And she was walking through this square, and she heard in the distance, she heard some music. Toward the music, and she saw the harper there, and she stayed and she listened, and as she listened, it was like the darkness that had descended on her was gone, and she didn't know how long it was, but eventually he stopped and he looked at her sort of apologetically and said, "My hands are just tired, I can't play anymore, I'm so sorry." And he smiled and gave her a long look and said, "But I'll be back tomorrow." And he was, and so was Kirsten. And she went and she would listen to him every day for weeks. And when he was done, he would walk her home and they would talk, just little things at first. But after a while, more and more. And she told him, Peter learned about her sisters and about her fears. And she learned about him, that he was able to come and play when he was feeling up to it, when he wasn't feeling sick, which was a lot more frequently now that he had met her. And the two of them were very close. And then one day he wasn't in the square, he wasn't playing. And he didn't come the next day, and he didn't come the day after that, and she was getting very worried about this time. The fear was coming back. Now, it wasn't done that a young lady would go visit a young gentleman in those days, but she was beside herself. She got on her horse. He had once kind of pointed out the mountain where his house was, and she rode up to the mountain. She got off the horse, and the stable boy helped her, and he took her inside, and she saw Peter lying there on the bed. His face was pale, and his eyes had huge bags under them, but he opened his eyes, and he saw her, and he said, "Kirsten, you're here. I've dreamed about you. Here, I want you to have something." And so he sat up and he reached for the drawer next to the bed, but his body was just seized and convulsed with this coughing fit, and he had to lay back down, and he just kind of pointed. So Kirsten went over and she opened the drawer and she took out a little wooden box, very intricately carved, and she opened it, and inside there was a golden ring. And Peter said, I didn't want to give it to you like in this way, but I want you to have it. And I'd also like you to have my harp. And I'd like you to play it when you think of me. And before she had a chance to respond, he was back asleep. He did not look good. He was totally pale. She looked, and there was a little little heartbeat here. She knew he was there. And she paced, worried and felt helpless. There was nothing she could do. And so she decided to just sit down, and she did. She began to play the harp for him. It may have been a trick of the light, but the colors started coming back to his face, and a little corner of a smile kind of played on his lips. And she kept playing until she was sure it was not the light. There was something contained in that music, and she did not stop. She played all night long until she fell asleep with her hands on the strings. And when she woke up, she saw Peter there. He was sitting up, he was smiling, he was looking at her, and they knew at that moment they would never be apart. And so they made it official, and they made plans for the wedding 2 weeks hence, and they were telling everyone, and they were planning and celebrating. But in those small moments in between, she would remember, the church is on the other side of the water. I'm going to have to cross that bridge. And her heart started palpitating, and her eyes would get filled with tears, not shed, just holding. And Peter would notice this, and he'd say, "My love, what is wrong?" And the smile was back, and she said, "Nothing, I'm fine." Well, the day came, and Kirsten got out of bed, she got dressed, she put on her veil, she got on her horse. She knew that she was going to have to cross the river with the Nikan. So she joined the procession, and they came, and there was the first plank of the bridge. And she stood there a while, sat there on the horse, and finally made herself push the horse forward. And it took a step, and it was fine. And took another step, and it was fine. And so she started going on the bridge, and it was a beautiful day, and the birds were singing, and she sort of scolded herself, like, "You're worrying about nothing." It was fine all this time. And then she heard some music to the side, and she turned, and so she saw a shadow in the water. And as the shadow came closer, she realized it was her sister. And at that point, all of the thoughts just went out of her mind, and she got off the horse, threw off the veil, went to the side of the bridge. And as she did, the water started to wave and thrust, and the bridge was shaken until she fell right off and into the water. And Peter's looking helpless as she's going beneath the water, her golden hair just shrouding her as she disappears. And he didn't know what to do. He can't fight the Nikan. It's this being of shadow with no substance. What do you do? And the eyes of the Nikan just kind of mocked him. So he didn't know what to do. Kirsten had asked him to bring the harp, so he took the harp and he put it on and he started playing. And it was a joyful song. He thought about the first time he saw her smile. He thought about the magic he felt when they were together, and he played. And it was as if the Nikan was kind of dancing to the music, in a sort of Nikanish way. And he kept playing and realized that this beast was helpless against the music. It couldn't go beneath the surface. It was enthralled. And so he kept playing the happy songs, and then he switched. poured all of his sorrow at losing Kirsten into that song, and it went straight into the deacon's heart. And he felt all the pain that he had caused, which he never had before. And great tears fell from his face, and as they hit the water, they sizzled and they evaporated. And he couldn't take it. He said, "Stop, stop." And he caused the water again. And the waves went on the shore, and with the wave came Kirsten. She was pale, but she was breathing. And then he said, "No, stop." But he kept playing. He said, "I want her sisters too." And so the beast, he had, imagine never feeling that pain, and then all of it just flooding you. He wanted it to stop. So again, he did the waves, and with the waves came the two sisters. And Peter wanted more than anything to go and hold her and to say, "I've saved you, I've saved your sisters, they're here." But he remembered his village, and he remembered his community and all of those people who had been taken, and all the families that were torn apart. And he couldn't stop. Even if the beast took Kirsten, he couldn't stop. This was the one chance. And he kept playing, and he kept playing, and all of the emotions flooded the deacon. And all he wanted was that to be over. So he caused the waves, and each wave brought people back, brought families back together. They were cold, they were wet, but they were alive. And finally, the last wave came, and there was no one left. Everyone had been returned. And at this point, the deacon lived on fear, and his power came from it. But without that, he was nothing, and the beast sort of dissipated into the water. Now, Peter and Kirsten did not get married that day, nor the next, but they did, and it was worth the wait. And it was many years later they could walk that bridge and not even think of the deacon, and their children swam in the water. And everyone learned to play the harp.